Amat merat derat ikmerut.
They say you should write about what you know, or in this case, create videos about what you know. Seeing as I know nothing though, I thought a good place to start would be a guide to better skepticism. And by skepticism here I mean skepticism in the sense that most in the skeptic community use the term, rather than in the sense of radical skepticism. So something closer to applying confidence to claims rather than to doubting that knowledge is even possible. Videos in the series will discuss topics like Cartesian skepticism and other forms of radical skepticism, though. Understanding these topics and what they argue can help us to be better skeptics, as does exploring and understanding the various thought experiments involved in radical skepticism. One of the reasons I'm motivated to make this series is simply because of how much bad skepticism and bad critical thinking I see in the skeptic community. Not only is skepticism and critical thinking important to me, but it is also something that is claimed to be important by other members of the community. Many wear skepticism and critical thinking as a badge of honor, with hashtag critical thinking and hashtag skepticism showing up in a lot of profiles. Yet there seems to be little in the way of promoting good skepticism and good critical thinking within the community itself. For many, it suffices simply to call oneself a skeptic or a critical thinker, and that skepticism and critical thinking ends with demands for evidence and doubting others. However, skepticism and critical thinking is not just about making demands of others, but making demands of ourselves. There is a lot of arrogance on display from many in the skeptic and atheist community when it comes to what they claim to know, and oftentimes that arrogance is grossly misplaced. Many are completely convinced that they know some particular fact, and often that particular fact is simply incorrect. There seems to be this unwillingness to doubt what they know, and they refuse to explore the idea that they could be wrong, hence showing bad skepticism and bad critical thinking. I'm hoping that this series of videos might help change that trend, though I'm kinda doubtful, as those very same self-proclaimed skeptics that are arrogant about what they claim to know will dismiss something like this, as they believe they already know all there is to know about skepticism and critical thinking. Which brings us to an important trait for good skepticism and good critical thinking: epistemic humility. Epistemic humility is an important trait when it comes to good skepticism, as well as being a better skeptic. It also shouldn't be that difficult of a trait for a skeptic to adopt, especially when we consider some of the mottos that many skeptics espouse and the mottos that go around the skeptic community. Think of statements like the following: we should never claim to know things with 100% certainty. I love being shown that I'm wrong, that way I have learned something new. I could be wrong about what I think I know, so I keep an open mind. Each of these statements describes an aspect of epistemic humility. There is a lot of literature on the idea of epistemic humility for those who wish to look further into it, but for our purposes here a basic explanation will suffice. Epistemic humility is the understanding that our experiences are limited and our knowledge is filtered through our experiences. This means that our understandings and knowledge are also limited. As our understandings and knowledge are limited, we should remain humble about what we claim about them. There are those who may have a greater amount of understanding and knowledge than we do based on their experiences. As such, we should remain open to being wrong, even about those things we consider ourselves to have a great amount of knowledge on and be absolutely certain about. Consider the following statement: I want to believe as many true things as possible, and as few false things as possible. This is another oft-promoted statement from those within the skeptic community. It's popular and you'll hear a lot of people saying it, including people like Aaron Ra and Matt Dillahunty. As one would imagine, epistemic humility is an important factor in following this ideal. If we believe that we already know everything about a topic, and we cannot be wrong about that topic, then how can we ever learn that we hold a false belief about that topic? It also means that a statement like, I love being shown that I'm wrong because then I learn something new, can never be fulfilled. After all, if we believe we cannot be wrong, then how can we be shown that we are wrong? Of course, having epistemic humility does not necessarily mean that we must remain epistemically humble in all cases. There are times when it is reasonable to dismiss certain claims, arguments, and even people, and without assuming that what they argue might be correct. Think of something like a young Earth creationist arguing that the Earth is 6,000 years old. This doesn't appear to be something that we should consider we could be wrong about. And there are many such examples. However, if all of our information simply comes from people that we've heard say things about a topic, or some popular claim within the community we exist, or it is a subject we have never really studied, then adopting a stance of epistemic humility seems to be something we, if we want to be better skeptics anyway, should do. There'll be a lot more on this later in the series when we discuss the value of sources of information, the trustworthiness of where we get that information from, being selective about our sources of information, and that kind of thing. For now, though, starting with the practicing of epistemic humility is enough to begin a journey of better skepticism, as well as better critical thinking. Epistemic humility is something that we should begin to practice as soon as possible, at least if we want to be good skeptics. It should become dispositional, or a part of who we are, and how we approach the world. It's an intellectual virtue, and something we should be striving for as a skeptic. In the next video in this series, I'll be discussing Cartesian skepticism, which is a slightly more radical form of skepticism than most in the skeptic community use. But there are some important and very useful lessons and elements that can be taken from it, so it's kind of important to understand. So for now, that's part 1 of the series, and hopefully I'll see you in part 2 soon. Thanks, bye.